On the last video, I was about to start the seatback tube, and knowing it's a highly visible part of our aircraft. Don't get me wrong, I want to take as much pride as I can in my build, and I want all of us to build them safely. When I made the comment, I know it's a highly visible item, but just like my welds, they'll look great from 1,000 foot in the air. I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek, but remember, you will be the one enjoying being in the air with an aircraft you built, while those armchair builders are talking up their game. Don't overthink your design and never get in the air. What I simply meant was, let's get busy, enjoy the build, and not to fail to start because we over worry about this or that. So speaking of getting busy, let's finish the tacking up of our fuselage. So I filled the 5/8 inch tube that will be my seat back with sand, taped the ends closed, and marked the tube every 2 inches. My thinking was if there were marks from the bender, it should be under the seat webbing. We'll see. So I just ever so slightly bent the tubing little by little till it matched my pattern I drew out, and then cut it to roughly an angle. In the picture you can see slight dimples, although the shadows in the picture make it look a lot worse than in real life. But again, seat webbing should cover these up. I'll add this seat back later once I've got the uprights out of my way. Next I moved on to station number 2. I made the uprights and crossbar first. Placed the final repurposed 2x4 from the backbone 1 1/4 inches in front of station number 2 in order to give the 1 1/4 inch tilt per the plans. After sanding the ends to shape, I tacked it into its proper location. I just kept measuring to a screw I put on the center line somewhere around station number 5, making sure both sides were equal, therefore square to the fuselage center line. In fact, I used this point of reference all the way to the firewall. Next I added the 5/8 inch lower seat bar and the 1/2 inch braces to the seat diagonals and to station number 2. Then the front 2 wing supports. Remember triangles, point to point. Keep moving forward, not putting yourself where you have to force a tube into its correct spot. Building this way will create a super strong and true structure and will require very little forms. I did strap a couple of scrap boards near the top of the cockpit to keep everything square with the aircraft centerline, and was then able to remove the last 2 backbone support boards, therefore allowing me to easily add the seat back. Sometimes during your build, sit back and enjoy the small milestones. So here we are completely tack welded from our dashboard back to the tail with basically no needed braces except for the 2 boards holding the dashboard square and the 1 board holding the tail up. You'll notice I moved the fuselage back about 1 foot or so it'd be easier to work on the front end. But the entire structure is very rigid right now, and it's just tacked together. Very little waste here. Of course, I tried to plan ahead and use tubing as wisely as I could. The next thing is to tackle the firewall. I cut it out and welded all corners of it while it was strapped to the table in order to keep it true. One could even weld the corner engine mounts at this time. I'll come back to that shortly. I brought it to the front and hung it in its proper position, but 5/8 of an inch higher at first. That way I can bring the lower tubes into position. I cut off those lower tubes to the proper length and using repurposed 2x4s to hold them in the correct location. Then I just marked and trimmed with the disc sander till the firewall sits in its correct position. I know, boring. Same. But it really is that simple. That's my goal with these videos. There's nothing complicated about this. Sure, if you look at the whole, it can be overwhelming, but just take it one piece at a time. Once I had the lower longerons in place and sanded to fit the firewall, it was time to add the bottom diagonal. Same as many times before. Cut to length, sand a general shape on the disc sander, and finish with the flapper disc, little by little, till it fits perfectly. Now moving on up the firewall, I added the diagonals to both sides. Remember, for me, the firewall is loose at this time. The object is to get the tubing all ready, but if you had already added the corner engine-mounted gussets, you could probably start welding these in place now, but I hadn't yet. I added all the upper tubing and got ready for the firewall. But now I had to tackle the engine mounts. I sketched them out on metal. I also knew this was the same metal that was used for the pivot point of the control stick, so I made sure I had left plenty for those as well. I cleaned up the gussets on my trusted disc sander and welded them to the tubing. I used scrap pieces of metal to hold them to the middle of the firewall tubing. To me, this was the hardest welding so far. Thus far with my setup was all .035 tubing. I was using 30 to 35 amps and a filler wire of about the same diameter. But now I had to crank the amperage up to about 90 amps and primarily heat up the plates while ever so slightly dabbing into the 035 tubing in order to keep from burning holes through the tubing. Anyways, I completely welded the firewall except for the mounting tubes. Hindsight, probably would have done those too. I took the firewall to the nose, double checked all measurements, and tack welded it into place. So now the fuselage is tacked and complete. I just had to see how much it weighed. 31.6 pounds. So with my 70 pounds of covered wings and ailerons, I'm setting at 101.6 pounds. Cool. But more importantly, now I can get an inventory of what is still needed. I did use a scrap piece of cutoff for this bar. My plan is to use this bar instead of the heavy brackets that came with my seatbelt. More on that to come. Again, I'd like to stop and thank each of you for taking the time to watch my videos. I am humbled with each and every one of you, and those of you that have reached out to me privately with questions and encouragement, thank you. Hopefully I will get a chance to meet some of y'all at Oshkosh at the end of the month. Don't forget, Leonard will celebrate his 99th birthday while at Oshkosh this year. They will also be celebrating 25 years of Legal Eagle. I sure think it would be special for him, for as many as can show and support all his hard work. I hope you have enjoyed this video and hopefully found some of the information helpful. And if you're on the fence about starting a Legal Eagle build, hopefully I've shown you just how easy it can be. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe to my YouTube, Odyssey, or Rumble channels. Thank you, and God bless.